Security! This woman is traveling with fraudulent documents! Richard Morrison's voice cuts through American Airlines' first-class cabin as he points at Jada Johnson in seat 2A. I don't care what fake boarding pass she printed, he announces loud enough for the entire section to hear. People like her always scam their way into places they can't afford. Jada feels every passenger's eyes burning into her. Airport police board the aircraft, phones rising to record everything. A businessman smirks. Probably stolen credit cards. Morrison's voice grows triumphant. Exactly. First class is for people who actually belong here. Jada's hands remain folded, steady despite the humiliation. Her bag contains something Morrison could never imagine. Around them, passengers whisper and film while the intercom crackles overhead. Have you ever watched someone destroy themselves with pure arrogance? The departure board flickers amber. Captain Mitchell, medical emergency. Replacement crew required immediately. Sometimes the person you're trying to humiliate holds your life in their hands. Jada Johnson settles into seat 2A with the practiced ease of someone who flies frequently. She places her small leather bag in the overhead compartment and pulls out a thick manual titled Advanced Aviation Weather Systems. The first-class cabin is nearly empty at this early boarding time, and she appreciates the quiet moment to review her materials. 20 minutes later, Richard Morrison boards the aircraft. At 55, he carries himself with the swagger of a man accustomed to getting his way. His Armani suit costs more than most people's monthly rent, his Rolex catches the cabin light, and his expression suggests the world exists for his convenience. Morrison stops abruptly when he sees Jada in the front row. "Excuse me," Morrison says, his voice carrying the tone of someone addressing service staff. "I think there's been a mistake." Jada looks up from a manual, her expression neutral but alert. Morrison continues without waiting for a response. "That's first-class seating, and I'm quite certain." He lets the sentence hang, his implication clear. Jada's voice remained steady. "I'm in my assigned seat. 2A. She holds up her boarding pass without defensiveness, simply stating fact. Morrison's face flushes slightly. He signals to a flight attendant, a young woman named Jennifer, who approaches with professional courtesy. "There seems to be some confusion about seating," Morrison announces. "This passenger appears to be in the wrong section." Jennifer checks Jada's boarding pass with a quick glance. "No, sir. Miss Johnson is in her correct seat. Is there something else I can help you with?" Her tone remains polite but firm. Morrison's jaw tightens. How exactly does someone her age afford first class? The question emerges loaded with assumptions, each word chosen to sting. "I'd like to see some identification, just to be sure everything's legitimate." The request hangs in the air like smoke. Other passengers begin to notice the commotion. Jada slowly closes her manual and reaches for her purse, her movements deliberate and controlled. She produces her driver's license and hands it to Jennifer, who examines it briefly before returning it. "Everything appears to be in order, sir," Jennifer says to Morrison. "Perhaps you'd like me to help you find your seat." Morrison's face darkens. "I've been flying first class for over 20 years. I know what belongs here and what doesn't." His voice rises slightly, drawing more attention from nearby passengers. "I'm not comfortable with this situation." Jada finally speaks, her voice calm but with an edge of steel underneath. "Mr. Morrison, I understand you may be having a difficult day, but I've done nothing to warrant your harassment." "Harassment?" Morrison scoffs. "I'm simply ensuring the safety and security of this flight. You never know who might be impersonating legitimate passengers these days." The accusation lands like a slap. Several passengers turn to stare, some pulling out phones to record. Jada's hands remain folded in her lap, but her knuckles show white beneath her brown skin. Morrison pulls out his own phone and dials. Yes, I'd like to report a suspicious passenger on American Airlines Flight 723, Gate 12, Terminal 4. He speaks loudly enough for the entire first-class section to hear. I believe someone may be traveling with fraudulent documentation. Jennifer looks mortified. Sir, please, this is highly irregular. The passenger has valid tickets and identification. I know what I'm looking at. Morrison snaps. And I'm not taking any chances with flight security. I demand that airport security verify this person's legitimacy before we take off. Jada's breathing remains steady, but something shifts in her eyes. The hurt is still there, but it's being joined by something else. Something that suggests Richard Morrison has made a terrible miscalculation. Within minutes, airport security officers board the plane. The lead officer, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, approaches Jada with obvious reluctance. Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you, but we've received a complaint. Would you mind if I take a look at your documents? Jada complies without protest, handing over her identification and boarding pass. The officer examines them thoroughly, even checking them against his computer tablet. Everything looks perfect, ma'am. I apologize for the inconvenience. Morrison interjects from across the aisle. That's not enough. Anyone can forge documents these days. I want a more thorough investigation. The security officer turns to Morrison with barely concealed irritation. Sir, the passenger's documentation is legitimate. There's no basis for further action. Then I want the police. Morrison declares, I'm not flying with someone who might be a security threat. I have rights as a paying customer. The officer sighs deeply. Sir, if you continue to make unfounded accusations, you'll be the one removed from this aircraft. But Morrison has already called 911 on his cell phone. I need police at JFK Airport, Terminal 4, Gate 12. There's a suspicious person on my flight who needs to be investigated properly. Jada watches this unfold with growing amazement. She's witnessed racism before, but rarely this blatant, this public, this utterly shameless. Around her, passengers whisper and record, some shaking their heads in disgust, others seeming to side with Morrison's concerns. The situation escalates when Morrison addresses the cabin directly. Fellow passengers, we all deserve to feel safe when we fly. I'm simply asking for proper verification before we trust our lives to this airline's security procedures. A woman in seat 4B speaks up. Sir, you're being completely inappropriate. That young woman has done nothing wrong. Morrison whirls around. How do you know? Have you verified her identity? Do you know why she's really here? The question hangs in the air with ominous weight. Jada closes her eyes briefly, gathering herself for what she knows is coming. Because Richard Morrison, in his arrogance and prejudice, is about to learn exactly why she's really here. Airport police arrive within 10 minutes, their presence adding a surreal gravity to the situation. The lead officer, Detective Williams, boards the aircraft with 2 colleagues, his expression suggesting this isn't how he planned to spend his afternoon. Morrison immediately approaches them with the confidence of someone accustomed to having authority figures listen to his concerns. Thank you for coming so quickly, Morrison says, extending his hand. I'm Richard Morrison, CEO of Morrison Development Group. I've noticed some irregular behavior from this passenger, and I felt it was my duty to report it. Detective Williams accepts the handshake, but his eyes are already assessing the situation. Jada sits quietly in her seat, her manual open in her lap, appearing remarkably composed for someone being accused of fraudulent travel. Other passengers watch with a mixture of fascination and horror as the drama unfolds. What specific irregular behavior have you observed, Mr. Morrison? Detective Williams asks, his tone professional but neutral. Morrison gestures toward Jada. She's clearly not supposed to be in first class. I mean, look at her. She's probably early 20s, and first-class tickets to Los Angeles cost over $800. Something doesn't add up. I'm 28, Jada says quietly. And I purchased my ticket through the airline's website using my American Express card. Would you like to see the receipt? Detective Williams nods. Yes, please. Jada retrieves her phone and shows the digital receipt. The officer examines it carefully, noting the purchase date, credit card information, and fare details. Everything appears legitimate. Morrison's frustration grows visible. Anyone can manipulate digital records. I want to know where she got the money for this ticket. What's her employment? How do we know she's not using stolen credit cards? The accusation draws gasps from nearby passengers. A man in seat 3C stands up. This is absolutely ridiculous. You can't interrogate someone about their finances just because you don't think they belong in first class. I can if I suspect fraudulent activity. Morrison snaps back. I've built a multi-million-dollar business by recognizing when things don't look right. Detective Williams raises his hand for silence. Mom, I understand this is intrusive, but would you mind sharing your occupation? Jada looks directly at Morrison before answering. I'm a pilot. The simple statement lands like a thunderbolt. Morrison's eyes narrow with suspicion. A pilot? What kind of pilot? Flying lessons at the local airport? I'm a commercial airline pilot. Jada responds, her voice gaining strength. I fly for American Airlines. Morrison laughs harshly. Right, and I suppose you're flying this plane today? Jada's expression doesn't change, but something flickers in her eyes. Actually, before she can finish, the aircraft's PA system crackles to life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing a brief delay due to a medical situation with our scheduled flight crew. We'll have an update for you shortly. Morrison's smugness falters slightly. The timing seems too coincidental, too perfectly aligned with Jada's claim. Detective Williams notices the shift in dynamics and decides to dig deeper. Mom, do you have your pilot's license with you? Jada reaches into her purse and produces a commercial pilot's license issued by the Federal Aviation Administration. Detective Williams examines it carefully, noting her credentials, ratings, and the recent renewal date. This appears to be legitimate, he says, looking between Jada and Morrison. Ms. Johnson is licensed to fly commercial aircraft. Morrison grabs the license, studying it with growing panic. This could be fake. How do we verify this? I want this checked against FAA databases immediately. The detective makes a call to verify the license number. While they wait, tension in the cabin continues to rise. Passengers are taking sides, some supporting Morrison's right to feel safe, others disgusted by his obvious racial profiling. Even if she is a pilot, Morrison argues, that doesn't explain why she's flying as a passenger in first class. Real pilots fly in uniform. They sit in the cockpit, not with paying customers. Jada's patience finally shows signs of wearing thin. Mr. Morrison, pilots often travel as passengers when they're deadheading to another city for their next assignment. It's standard industry practice. Deadheading? Morrison scoffs. More airline jargon to make your story sound believable. Detective Williams returns with confirmation that Jada's license is indeed valid and current. The information seems to deflate Morrison's confidence, but he doubles down on his accusations. Fine, maybe she has a license, but I still don't believe she's supposed to be on this plane. I want her removed until we can verify her story completely. The request triggers something in Jada that has been building throughout this ordeal. She stands up slowly, her full height commanding attention. When she speaks, her voice carries a new authority that makes everyone in the cabin pay attention. "Mr. Morrison," she says, "you've spent the last 30 minutes trying to have me removed from this aircraft, based solely on your assumptions about who deserves to sit in first class. You've questioned my right to be here, my ability to afford my ticket, and my professional credentials." Morrison starts to interrupt, but Jada continues. "You've involved security, police, and created a disturbance that has delayed this entire flight. All because you looked at me and decided I didn't belong. I was concerned about safety." Morrison protests weakly. "No," Jada replies. "You were concerned about your own prejudices, and now you're about to learn exactly how misguided those prejudices can be." The cabin falls silent. Even Detective Williams seems to sense that something significant is about to happen. Jada's composure has shifted from defensive to something else entirely. Something that suggests Richard Morrison is about to face the consequences of his assumptions in a way he never could have imagined. Outside the aircraft windows, ground crews continue their preparations for departure, unaware that inside the cabin, a reckoning is building that will change everything for everyone involved. The aircraft's PA system crackles again, and this time the voice belongs to Jennifer, the flight attendant who has been watching the drama unfold with growing concern. Her announcement cuts through the tension like a knife through silk. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have an update regarding our departure delay. Due to a sudden medical emergency, Captain Mitchell has been transported to the hospital and will be unable to complete today's flight." Murmurs ripple through the cabin. Air travel delays are common, but medical emergencies involving flight crew create a different kind of uncertainty. Passengers begin calculating missed connections and ruined plans. Jennifer continues, her voice professional but tinged with something that sounds almost like anticipation. "However, we are fortunate to have a replacement captain aboard today's flight. The Federal Aviation Administration requires that we inform passengers of any crew changes." Morrison shifts uncomfortably in his seat, a growing unease visible in his expression. Something about the timing, the careful way Jennifer is delivering this information, suggests that his world is about to turn upside down. "Your captain for today's flight will be Captain Jada Johnson," Jennifer announces, who brings 8 years of commercial aviation experience and over 10,000 hours of flight time to ensure your safe arrival in Los Angeles. The silence that follows is deafening. It's the kind of silence that occurs when reality shifts so dramatically that human minds need a moment to process what they've just heard. Morrison's face goes through a remarkable transformation, cycling from confusion to disbelief to dawning horror. Jada remains seated, but something fundamental has changed in her posture. The defensive crouch of someone being attacked has been replaced by the quiet confidence of someone who has just revealed their hand in a high-stakes game. Detective Williams is the first to speak. "Ma'am, is this correct? Are you the replacement captain for this flight?" Jada stands and removes her blazer, revealing the crisp white shirt and golden wings of an American Airlines captain underneath. The uniform she's been wearing all along, hidden beneath her civilian jacket. "Yes, Detective Williams. I am Captain Jada Johnson, and I will be flying this aircraft to Los Angeles today." Morrison's mouth opens and closes without sound. The blood has drained from his face, leaving him pale and shaken. The man who minutes ago was demanding Jada's removal from the aircraft now realizes that his life and the lives of everyone aboard depend entirely on her skill and professionalism. "This is impossible," Morrison whispers, though his voice carries no real conviction. "This has to be some kind of mistake." Jada approaches Morrison's seat, her captain's hat now visible in her hand. When she speaks, her voice carries the authority of someone who has spent years making life-and-death decisions at 35,000 feet. Mr. Morrison, there's no mistake. I am the captain of this aircraft. I will be responsible for your safety from takeoff to landing. Every decision about this flight, every response to potential emergencies, every factor that determines whether you arrive safely in Los Angeles or not, rests with me. The implications hit Morrison like a physical blow. The woman he has spent 40 minutes trying to humiliate and remove from the aircraft now holds complete authority over his fate. The irony is so profound, so perfectly constructed by circumstance, that it seems almost orchestrated by some cosmic sense of justice. Other passengers begin to react with a mixture of amazement and satisfaction. The woman in seat 4B starts to clap slowly, and others join in. The applause builds until the entire first-class section is giving Jada a standing ovation. Morrison remains seated, his hands gripping the armrests so tightly his knuckles have turned white. I didn't know, he stammers. If I had known you were a pilot, you would have treated me differently? Jada asks. Mr. Morrison, does my profession determine whether I deserve basic human respect? Does my job title decide whether I belong in first class? Detective Williams has been watching this exchange with professional interest, but now he steps forward. Captain Johnson, given the circumstances, would you prefer that we remove Mr. Morrison from the aircraft? The question hangs in the air with delicious possibility. Morrison's eyes widen in terror as he realizes that the very removal he demanded for Jada could now be applied to him. Poetic justice delivered with ruthless efficiency. Jada considers the question with the same calm deliberation she would apply to any important decision. Detective Williams, Mr. Morrison purchased a valid ticket and has committed no crime other than displaying poor judgment and worse manners. As captain of this aircraft, I have the authority to remove passengers who pose a safety risk, but I don't believe Mr. Morrison qualifies. Relief floods Morrison's face, but Jada isn't finished. However, she continues, I want to be absolutely clear about something. Once we close that cabin door, I am the final authority on this aircraft. Every passenger, regardless of their wealth, status, or personal opinions, will follow my instructions and those of my crew. Any passenger who creates a disturbance, questions my authority, or makes other passengers uncomfortable will be dealt with accordingly. She looks directly at Morrison. Do you understand these terms, Mr. Morrison? Morrison nods frantically. Yes, Captain, absolutely. I understand completely. Jada turns to address the entire cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this delay and the uncomfortable situation you've witnessed. I want to assure you that despite the unconventional beginning to our flight, American Airlines maintains the highest standards of safety and professionalism. I look forward to providing you with excellent service during our flight to Los Angeles. As Jada heads toward the cockpit, Morrison slumps in his seat, the full weight of his humiliation settling upon him. The man who began this flight feeling superior to everyone around him now sits in stunned silence, knowing that every passenger on the aircraft has witnessed his complete and utter defeat. The power dynamics have shifted so completely that the very air in the cabin seems different. Jada Johnson, who started this journey as the target of baseless accusations and racial prejudice, now commands not just respect, but absolute authority over the same man who tried to destroy her dignity. Justice, it seems, sometimes wears a pilot's uniform and flies at 35,000 feet. Morrison sits in his first-class seat like a man in a nightmare from which he cannot wake. The comfortable leather that once represented his status now feels like a prison, confining him to witness his own complete humiliation. Around him, Passengers continue to whisper and point, many still recording the aftermath of his spectacular downfall on their phones. The woman in seat 4B leans across the aisle. "You should be ashamed of yourself," she says, her voice dripping with disgust. "That young woman showed you more grace than you deserved." Morrison tries to respond, but words fail him. How do you explain away 40 minutes of public racism? How do you justify questioning someone's right to exist in a space based solely on the color of their skin? The excuses that seemed reasonable in his head now sound hollow and pathetic in the harsh light of reality. "I didn't know she was a pilot," he finally manages to whisper. "That's exactly the problem," responds a man from seat 3A. "You thought her profession mattered. You thought her job title determined her worth. What if she was a teacher? A nurse? A student? Would that have made your behavior acceptable?" The questions hit Morrison like physical blows. He realizes that every justification he might offer only digs his hole deeper. The truth is unavoidable. He judged Jada Johnson based on her appearance and found her unworthy of sharing his space. From the cockpit, Jada's voice fills the cabin as she conducts her pre-flight announcements. Her tone is professional, confident, and completely unruffled by the drama that has just concluded. She sounds like exactly what she is, a competent professional doing her job. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Johnson. We'll be pushing back from the gate in approximately 10 minutes. Flight time to Los Angeles will be 5 hours and 32 minutes. Weather conditions are favorable, and we anticipate a smooth flight." Morrison closes his eyes and tries to process the reality of his situation. The woman he attempted to humiliate now literally holds his life in her hands. Every decision she makes for the next 5.5 hours will determine his fate. The irony is so profound it makes him physically nauseous. His phone buzzes with text messages. Word of the incident has already begun to spread through social media, and colleagues are sending him links to videos that passengers have posted online. The hashtag #ArchRacistBusinessman is beginning to trend, and Morrison's face is becoming recognizable to millions of people worldwide. His assistant texts, "Richard, there's a video of you on a plane going viral. Morrison Development Group's phone hasn't stopped ringing. Legal wants to talk to you immediately." Morrison's hands shake as he reads message after message. Business partners are demanding explanations. The hotel chain that was considering a major development deal has postponed their meeting indefinitely. His company's stock price is already dropping in after-hours trading as investors react to the negative publicity. A young man in seat 2C turns around to face Morrison. "Dude, you're famous. There are already memes about you on Twitter." He shows Morrison his phone screen, displaying a picture of Morrison's shocked face with the caption, "When you realize the person you're being racist to is literally the only thing keeping you alive." The meme has been shared thousands of times in the last 20 minutes. Morrison tries to shrink into his seat, but there's nowhere to hide. Every passenger on the plane knows who he is and what he's done. The flight attendants eye him with barely concealed contempt. Even the elderly gentleman in first class, who initially seemed sympathetic to his concerns, now avoids eye contact. As the aircraft pushes back from the gate, Morrison feels each movement with heightened awareness. Every slight vibration, every change in engine pitch, every banking turn reminds him that Jada Johnson is in control. The woman he tried to have arrested is now responsible for his safe arrival in Los Angeles. The takeoff is flawless, of course. Jada Johnson didn't become a commercial airline captain by accident. Her expertise is evident in every smooth maneuver, every professional announcement, every decision that demonstrates her complete mastery of her craft. Morrison spends the flight in a state of nervous exhaustion. He can't sleep, can't eat, can't focus on anything other than the growing disaster his life has become. His phone continues to buzz with increasingly dire updates from his business partners and legal team. By the time they reach cruising altitude, Captain Jada is trending alongside racist businessman. Jada has become an overnight symbol of grace under pressure, professional excellence, and quiet dignity in the face of prejudice. Morrison, meanwhile, has become the poster child for entitled racism and corporate arrogance. The flight continues without incident, but for Morrison, every minute feels like an hour. He's trapped at 35,000 feet with 200 witnesses to his humiliation, unable to escape the consequences of his actions. When they finally begin their descent into Los Angeles, Morrison realizes that landing safely doesn't mean his ordeal is over. It means he'll have to face a world that now knows exactly who he really is. And he has Captain Jada Johnson to thank for delivering him safely to that reckoning. The irony tastes bitter in his mouth, but there's no denying the truth. The woman he tried to destroy has become his unwitting savior, professionally executing her duties despite his unforgivable behavior. She has shown him a level of professionalism and integrity that he failed to demonstrate in 40 minutes of shameful conduct. As the aircraft touches down smoothly on the runway, Morrison understands that his real problems are just beginning. 6 months after Flight 723, the reverberations of that fateful journey continue to reshape lives in ways both profound and unexpected. Jada Johnson sits in the conference room of American Airlines headquarters, no longer just a captain, but now the director of diversity and inclusion for the entire airline. The promotion came with a substantial salary increase and the opportunity to influence policy across one of America's largest carriers. The Jada Johnson incident, as it's become known in corporate training seminars, has become a case study in implicit bias and the importance of treating all customers with dignity, regardless of appearance or assumptions. American Airlines now requires all employees to complete annual training that includes video footage from that day, carefully edited to protect privacy, while illustrating the devastating consequences of prejudicial behavior. Jada's story has resonated far beyond the aviation industry. She's been invited to speak at universities, corporate conferences, and civil rights organizations across the country. Her message is always the same: competence and character have no color, and judging people by their appearance says more about the observer than the observed. The scholarship program she established, Wings of Opportunity, has already provided full flight training to 12 young people from underrepresented communities. 3 of them have been hired by major airlines, and 2 more are completing their commercial pilot certifications. Jada often tells them that their success is the best response to those who would doubt their capabilities. Richard Morrison's journey has been considerably more difficult. Morrison Development Group lost 17 major contracts in the 6 months following the incident, as corporations distanced themselves from the negative publicity. The company's valuation dropped by 40%, forcing Morrison to sell his majority stake to prevent bankruptcy. However, Morrison's story doesn't end with simple financial ruin. The public humiliation and professional consequences forced him to confront the prejudices that had been lurking beneath his successful exterior for decades. Court-ordered anger management and diversity training introduced him to perspectives he had never seriously considered. Morrison now works as a consultant for companies seeking to improve their diversity and inclusion practices. His unique perspective as someone who has experienced the consequences of bias firsthand gives him credibility with executives who might dismiss other voices. He often speaks alongside Jada at corporate events, offering the rare perspective of someone who has been both perpetrator and victim of his own prejudices. I was forced to examine beliefs I didn't even know I held, Morrison explains to audiences. Success and privilege had insulated me from the reality of my own biases until they were exposed in the most public way possible. The relationship between Jada and Morrison remains complex, but oddly productive. They are not friends, but they have become unlikely allies in the fight against prejudice. Morrison's willingness to acknowledge his mistakes and work toward redemption has impressed even Jada, though she maintains professional distance. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Jada often says. It means choosing to use painful experiences as fuel for positive change rather than allowing them to create more pain. The viral video from Flight 723 has been viewed over 50 million times across various social media platforms. It sparked thousands of conversations about racism, privilege, and the assumptions people make about others. Psychology professors use it to illustrate implicit bias. Business schools analyze it as a case study in crisis management, and sociology departments examine it as an example of how social media can amplify social justice issues. Detective Williams, who witnessed the confrontation firsthand, often reflects on how the incident challenged his own assumptions about conflict resolution. I expected to be mediating a simple passenger dispute, he recalls. Instead, I watched a masterclass in grace under pressure and the power of maintaining dignity in the face of injustice. Jennifer, the flight attendant who made the crucial announcement about Jada's role as captain, has been promoted to purser and often shares her experience in customer service training programs. The way Captain Johnson handled that situation taught me that true professionalism means doing your job excellently regardless of how others treat you. The incident has also influenced policy changes throughout the airline industry. Several major carriers have implemented new protocols for handling passenger complaints that require verification of actual safety concerns before any customer can be removed from aircraft. The Morrison Protocols, as they're unofficially known, prevent the weaponization of security concerns to target passengers based on prejudice. Jada's parents, who watched their daughter face national scrutiny with remarkable composure, speak proudly of her resilience and grace. She could have responded with anger, her father notes. Instead, she responded with excellence. That's how real change happens. The story has inspired a documentary, 2 books, and countless articles about racism in travel, the power of professional excellence, and the unexpected ways that justice can manifest. Jada continues to receive letters from young people who see her as proof that competence and character can triumph over prejudice. Perhaps most remarkably, the incident has created an ongoing dialogue about the assumptions people make in their daily lives. The Jada Challenge became a social media movement encouraging people to examine their own biases and treat everyone they encounter with basic human dignity, regardless of appearance or perceived status. The legacy of Flight 723 extends far beyond a single airplane journey. It has become a symbol of how individual actions can create ripple effects that touch thousands of lives, how public accountability can force personal growth, and how maintaining dignity in the face of injustice can inspire others to examine their own behavior. Jada Johnson continues to fly, but now she also soars as an advocate for equality and an example of how to transform adversity into opportunity for positive change. The story of Flight 723 isn't just about one woman's grace under pressure or one man's public reckoning with his prejudices. It's a mirror that reflects the choices we all make every single day when we encounter people who don't look like us, don't dress like us, or don't fit our preconceived notions of who belongs where. Right now, Somewhere in the world, someone is making the same assumptions Richard Morrison made. They're looking at another person and deciding, based on appearance alone, whether that person deserves respect, dignity, or even basic courtesy. They're choosing prejudice over possibility, assumption over understanding. But you have a different choice available to you. You can choose to be the person who sees Jada Johnson's competence before her color, who recognizes expertise regardless of age, who understands that worth isn't determined by appearance. You can choose to be the person who lifts others up instead of trying to tear them down. The power to change this narrative rests in your hands, in your daily interactions, in the split-second decisions you make when you encounter someone different from yourself. You can choose curiosity over judgment, respect over dismissal, inclusion over exclusion. Every time you board a plane, enter a restaurant, or walk through your neighborhood, you have the opportunity to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. You can choose to see the humanity in others rather than the stereotypes that society has taught you to expect. The question isn't whether you'll encounter situations that test your character and challenge your assumptions. The question is how you'll respond when those moments arrive. Will you be the person who lifts others up, or will you be the person who learns about dignity and respect only after facing the consequences of its absence? Jada Johnson's story reminds us that excellence has no color, competence knows no gender, and dignity should never be conditional. In a world that too often judges by appearances, choose to be the person who looks deeper. The next time you find yourself making assumptions about someone based on how they look or where you think they belong, remember Flight 723. Remember that the person you're judging might just be the person whose expertise, kindness, or skill you'll need most. Choose respect, choose dignity, choose to see the potential in everyone you meet. Because sometimes the person you least expect to change your life is sitting right next to you.